All right, well, let's make a start. So my name's Dennis Marsh. For those, I wasn't here last week, but I was here the week before, so I may have already met some of you. But welcome. I'm very happy to be here, and I'd like to just try to share with you some meditation techniques, some basic meditation techniques that I've learned, that I practice myself, and also to introduce you to some of the main concepts or the main ideas that's taught in Buddhism. So I've been a member here of Tara Institute for many years, and I'm not sitting here as a teacher, but I am sitting here as somebody that would like to share some of the things that I've learned and have conviction in, and Geshe Doga particularly dobbed me in to give a talk, because there's been a regular group of people that teach on Monday nights, and it needed some new people, and he suggested maybe Dennis could do that. So let's start just by doing some breathing meditation. If you're not familiar with meditation, then there is a meditation posture that I'd encourage you to try to sit in. You can do this at home in your own comfort, but it's the meditation posture that the Buddha has taught, and it's to encourage focus and attention while you do this meditation. So there are 7 features to the meditation posture. Most importantly is to have a straight back. So if you can, when you have a meditation cushion, or when you're sitting on a cushion, have the back of the cushion a little bit higher than the front of the cushion. It aids keeping the back straight. And there's some actual science behind that, because in Buddhism it's taught that there are energy channels that run parallel with the spine. And by having your back straight, you're having that energy channel straight, and that enhances concentration. You'll notice it. I notice it. You know, if you slouched, it's not the same as having a straight back and focus that way. So if you can sit with cross-legged position, I'm sitting comfortably in the half lotus. Others can sit in the full lotus. Legs, I don't think are really that important. We want to be comfortable. We want to focus our mind. So if our knees are sore and we're not able to cross our legs, don't worry about it. But we should be able to keep a straight back. So the third point is about the hands. So if you have your right hand sitting on your left hand and your 2 thumbs touching, resting on your lap and just pointing roughly to your navel, something like that. So that's 3. Then you want to have your shoulders, even and relaxed, and even allow a little bit of, not tight, a little bit of space so air can circulate like that. Then with respect to your head, just have your head tilted slightly forward, and your tongue resting up on the palate, your teeth not clenched, just natural, just normal, and your eyes, it's encouraged to keep your eyes slightly open. Especially for us beginners, if we have our eyes completely closed, we could easily fall asleep if we're not alert. So it's suggested that you focus on the tip of the nose. So with a gentle gaze at the nose, at the tip of the nose, then really we've assumed what's called the 7-fold Virachana meditation posture, which is, Virachana Buddha is the aspect of the perfection of the body. So we're going to assume that posture. And now we're going to focus on our breath for 21 rounds. And the breath is really a very good object to focus on, because breathing is natural. So we don't want to aid our breathing. We just want to focus on the sensation as the breath passes the nostrils. As we inhale and exhale, count that as 1. So we're going to do this for a count of 21. So let's start. And if your mind wanders off, just gently bring it back to the breath. You're just focusing on that sensation on the nostrils. So that's about 21 breaths. So let's still continue for a little bit longer. But this time, as we breathe in, let's just imagine that this brilliant white, purifying light, you breathe in that light and it completely fills your body. Feel that you're filled with great blessings and happiness and joy. The source of that light can be from the Buddha, from the enlightened mind of the Buddha, or it can be from whatever source you have faith in. Light coming from God or from Jesus, but it's pure light. And as you breathe out, all your anxieties, all your tension, illness, unhappiness, disturbance, anything that's unpleasant, you breathe out in the form of black light. So we're just going to cleanse ourselves with another 21 breaths. Breathing in the white light, breathing out the black light. And feeling that we become completely, our body becomes completely clear, and we're very relaxed. So now we're more focusing on the light, breathing in the white light and breathing out the black light. And when you breathe out the black light, it's gone forever. It goes way beyond the horizons. If you have any particular illness or particular obstacle, focus on that and imagine you're breathing that out. And all the qualities that we need, we're breathing in. Patience, love, compassion. All right, so we just gently bring our awareness back to the room. When I first became interested in Buddhism, I used to go up to a place in Bendigo called Atisha Centre. And I still love Atisha Centre. Has anybody been up to Atisha Centre or the Great Stupa? Yes? Only a few. I mean, it's a great place to go to. What they've established there now is the biggest stupa. And stupa is a word that it represents the Buddha's holy mind. And so they've got the jade Buddha up there. It's the biggest in the southern hemisphere, and it's just wonderful. It's worthwhile having a look at. Just Google it. The Great Stupa of Universal Compassion. Anyway, that's a place I love to go to. I've been going there since the 1980s, and it's just evolved into, it's got a monastery now, it's got a main meditation centre, and now it's got the Great Stupa. So anyway, the point that I was that I was recalling was when I first started there, we would do this meditation, this breathing meditation, and the person that used to lead it we would do this for an hour, and it was just mental torture. You know, I'm sure you will have found it's hard to focus your mind. We can do it for 21 breaths. It's not that bad. But, you know, when you sit there for an hour, it's an awfully long time. And, you know, I don't think I've ever done it for an hour since then. It was sort of like a torture. I do other meditations, but it's not that focused for that time. But, you know, with practice, the mind does settle a little bit more and more, the more familiar and the more you do it. So it's worthwhile calling on this meditation technique if you're feeling agitated, if you're needing to give yourself a mental rest. So that's really what it's for. So what I said a couple of weeks ago on my first introduction to this talk, you know, I described the mind as being like the wild elephant. And, you know, an elephant's very destructive if it's not tamed. It can destroy, I mean, the analogy is really back in India, I guess. It can destroy villages and wreak havoc, whereas an elephant that's subdued and controlled, you know, is of great benefit to people that know how to use it properly. So in a way, the mind is a bit like that. It can be either destructive or it can be extremely powerful if we use our mind in a positive and in a virtuous way. So we can make great leaps forward in bringing about our own mental peace. So, let me just get my notes. So this is doing meditation on the breath, and it's very easy, and we can do that. We can also choose to have a meditation object, and this is what I try to do as my main sort of practice. Like, it's often recommended in the Buddhist meditation to visualize the Buddha as your object of meditation. So if you choose to use that object, then you look at a picture of the Buddha. You notice the Buddha's sitting in a lotus. It's in the full lotus posture. You know, his hands like this, holding a begging bowl. This hand's resting here, looking very peaceful and serene, wearing robes and adorned with all these special physical signs like the Ushnishna, which is a special top knot on the Buddha's crown. Said to be, it's the result of accumulating incredible virtue over a vast amount of time. So it's a spiritual attainment to have that Ushnishna there, it's called. But anyway, so familiarising with yourself with that image, then you bring that image into your mind. So what you're really meditating on with the meditation object is a mental object, not a physical object. So you're visualising the Buddha about this far away from you, at the eye, at the level of the brow, and you're trying to focus on that image and to hold it as much as you can. Very difficult, very difficult. Again, we see even more so, I think, than with breathing meditation, that the mind is distracted. It's racing off in every direction, thinking about what we're doing through the day or other worries or concerns. So by choosing an object of meditation, we bring our mind back to that object over and over, over and over. And, you know, eventually it is possible to develop such concentration that you achieve a state called single point of concentration, or shamatha. And with that state of concentration, your mind is totally under your power and control. And you can focus on whatever object of meditation you choose for however long you choose. There's no distraction whatsoever. It's a level of concentration, what I'm describing is way beyond our understanding. You know, the great yogis of Tibet, the meditation masters that come to this centre, you know, I believe have developed such levels of concentration, but it only comes as a result of, you know, repeated meditation. I'm really just giving a little bit of a background on sort of what you can achieve through meditation. So it's said that it's even possible within 6 months of going off and doing a meditation retreat, that if all the circumstances are there, if your mind isn't totally distracted with worldly affairs, you know, you're able to take yourself away from being concerned about what's happening in your daily life. If you're able to free yourself from that, if all the conditions are right, then it is possible to develop that state of mind within 6 months. Be great to do that when you're young, and then if you look, you know, you've got that tool available. But I mean, it's a spiritual development we're talking here, and with that achievement, it comes with clairvoyance as a byproduct of developing that sort of level of absorption of total focus of mental concentration. Again, this is something that is obviously out of my experience altogether, but I'm really just describing that these are the sort of things that are possible through meditation. So that's not the goal of the Buddhist path, to achieve that at all. That's just about one of the tools that is then available for you to use to help with developing the mind to its fullest potential. So, yeah, just wanted to mention that. So what I'd like to talk about tonight, and I'll just talk for another 10 or 15 minutes, and then I really welcome questions or discussion, and then we'll finish off with another meditation for 10 or 15 minutes. So what I really wanted to continue on is the topic of the precious human rebirth. I don't know if you've heard about this precious human rebirth before, but it's a very important topic presented in Buddhism, because with this human body and this human mind, it's taught that you can achieve the goals you can achieve in our next life. I'm leaping from this life to next life. With this human rebirth, with this human life, it's possible to ensure that in our next life we obtain another good human rebirth. With this precious human body, it's possible to even achieve the complete liberation from the cycle of birth and death, which is what Buddhism describes, that we've been caught within this cycle of birth and death since beginningless time. So the potential of this human life is that we can actually achieve liberation from that circle. That's only the medium goal. The ultimate goal is that it's possible to achieve the complete state of enlightenment. So the Buddha wasn't always the Buddha. The Buddha was just like us at one time, a long time ago. And it was only through the practice of meditation and perseverance and uprooting the deep-seated ignorance that holds us caught within this cycle, that the Buddha was actually able to achieve complete enlightenment. The big difference between liberating oneself from the cycle of samsara, from cyclic existence, and achieving the state of Buddhahood or enlightenment is that the Buddha recognised that just as he was caught in cyclic existence, so are all other sentient beings. I'm throwing in a lot of terms here. I hope it's not too foreign to too many of you. Like I've mentioned samsara and sentient beings, but the Buddha recognised that not only was he caught in that cycle, but so are all other sentient beings. So out of incredible love and compassion, he sought what is the best method to be able to help all sentient beings. And the best method is to achieve enlightenment yourself, because then you have unobstructed wisdom, infinite compassion, ultimate skillful means. So the Buddha was empowered to offer the greatest benefit, to guide others along the similar path to that enlightenment. So it's funny when you prepare for a talk, you write things down, and I haven't really covered anything yet. But what I wanted to, I'll try and follow it a bit more now. What I wanted to read was a verse from this text, A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, It was written by a great Buddhist master in the 8th century. This is a wonderful book. I've read it a number of times. It's highly praised by the Dalai Lama. He's taught it many times. Geshe Doga, the resident Lama that lives here at Tara Institute, he's taught this text a number of times as well. So it's just wonderful. And I'll talk a little bit about Shantideva shortly and who he was. But one of the verses that, was meaningful to me goes like this. Relying upon this boat of a human form, free yourself from the great river of pain. As it is hard to find this boat again, this is no time for sleep, you fool. So, when I first became interested in Buddhism, it was a very strong attraction. I really felt I had met a true and reliable path. And especially when I met the lamas from Tibet, I realised that was absolutely the case. So I want to practice the Dharma or the Buddhist teachings. And, in my 20s or 30s, I was very lazy and slept in a lot. So I actually printed that verse and put it on my filing cabinet, and every time I'd go into the room I'd see that there and to try to remind myself of that. But if you break down that verse, relying upon the boat of a human form, so really what that's saying, and I don't really like to use Buddhist dogma in a way, but I'm going to, I'm sorry, just a little bit. So when I talk about this word, the precious human rebirth, why it's called a precious human rebirth is because it comes with 8 freedoms and 10 endowments. And what they represent are the collection of the most conducive circumstances that are possible for us to approach a spiritual practice. To have the opportunity to be able to approach something like the practice of Buddhism, to follow the path. Just to mention a couple to give you a taste of what those 18 represent, for example, because, I won't, Buddhism teaches about reincarnation and that we have had past lives and that we have future lives. And there are infinite future lives and we have infinite past lives. I have 3 dogs. And dogs, like all animals, have feelings. They want to be loved. They're affectionate. Our dogs are sentient beings, but they've been reborn in an animal realm. So, having been born as a dog, there's very little potential that our dogs have to be able to meditate, to be able to study some of the philosophies taught in Buddhism, to adjust their behaviour, to actually think, maybe I shouldn't go and attack birds and try and kill them. Our dogs have terrible habits. Maybe they shouldn't go and eat the other dog's feces, which is some of the things that they do. But crazy. But all I'm saying is we are not in the animal realm. We're free of that particular type of life. So we have great opportunity. That's one of the freedoms from being born as an animal. And in terms of some of the endowments, there's 10 endowments. 5 are personal endowments and 5 are circumstantial endowments. 5 of the personal endowments, well, if we don't have an open mind, if we don't have a mind that is open and faithful to even want to inquire about these teachings, then the door doesn't even open. There's no opportunity. And and also being born as a human is one of those endowments as well. And if you talk about the circumstantial endowments, if we were born, if you imagine that we have had infinite past lives, the Buddhas do not appear in many of those periods. It's quite rare for a Buddha to appear. It's quite rare for a Buddha to teach. So we've been born at a time when the Buddha has appeared, is teaching. The teachings are flourishing. There are practitioners of Buddhism that are very pure and very genuine and exerting great effort to follow that path. So they can assist us in our practice. So these are just, I'm trying to just give you a flavour of why this human life is precious from the Buddhist perspective. So relying upon this boat of a human form. So a boat can carry us from one spot to another across a river. So this human form allows us to progress somewhere. Free yourself from the great river of pain. And, you know, I've prepared quite a lot tonight to talk about the suffering nature of human existence, which is not meant to be a depressing topic. It's meant to be a topic of facing reality. And only if you face reality can you do anything about anything. So I do want to cover that. I don't want it, it's not being presented as a depressing topic, but as a real topic. Because, you know, unless you realise, if you don't realise you're in prison, you're not going to have any inclination to want to escape. So unless you recognise that there's a condition of some illness, you're not going to go to the doctor. So from Buddhism's perspective, unless we recognise that the nature of our existence is in the nature of suffering, because there are causes for that, then we won't seek to find a remedy to that. So it's really important. So relying upon the boat of a human form, free yourself from the great river of pain. So that means pretty well what I was saying earlier. Free yourself from the great river of pain. Let's ensure that in our next life we have been born as a human. And we can ask, people can ask, please ask questions about that. If you have doubts and want to discuss that, you know, what about reincarnation? Is that real, or, you know, or anything like that? I'm really open to any discussion on that. But so the first river of pain is you want to ensure that you at least have a human rebirth in your next life. The other one is Buddhism presents that we're caught in the cycle of birth and death since beginningless time, and it won't continue, and the nature of any of those lives is characterised with suffering in some way. So until we're liberated from the causes that cause us to remain cycling in that, then it won't end. So this is encouraging us, seize the opportunity. You have the opportunity, and there is a path to be followed. There are goals to be achieved. And then the third one is, when I talk about the river of pain, is being free from all the inner obstacles and inner obscurations and ignorance that's deep-seated within us. And when that's completely removed, then we can achieve the complete state of enlightenment. So, then it says, as it is hard to find this boat again. So, having recognised that we have a opportunity, a precious opportunity to do something meaningful, it won't last forever. This life is ticking away, is slowly ticking away. No guarantee when this life's going to end, but one thing is for certain, it will end. So if you have something that's very precious and you don't utilise it and it's lost, then really you've wasted an opportunity. And this is why, first of all, recognise that what we have is actually precious and rare and something that we should utilise. Then recognise that it won't last forever. This particular one, as it is hard to find this boat again. So here we are, human beings. But there are causes to be born as a human being. And there are extremely difficult causes to be born as a human being with these 18 freedoms and endowments. Extremely difficult. But we have, for somehow, created these conditions. So, as it is hard to find this boat again, so the causes are extremely difficult to create. The main causes to be born as a human being is the practice of morality. It's said to be born with a precious human life, you must have practiced pure morality in your past life. You must have made stainless prayers to obtain a human life, and the practice of generosity. So they're the three main causes for a precious human life. The Buddha gave an example of how difficult it is to obtain a precious human life. And you may have heard this example before, it's quite well known. But if you imagine that there's a vast ocean and the wind's blowing, it's very choppy, and floating on that ocean is a ring. They say a golden yoke. I don't know why it's called a yoke, but a golden, like a ring, floating there. And in the ocean is a turtle. And that turtle only surfaces from the depths of the ocean once every 100 years. And arising from the bottom to the surface is an example of the rarity of a human life. Seems a bit funny to hear that, with 8 billion humans in the world, but there are, compared with the number of other lives, in the animal realm, and there are other realms of existence that we can't see, so it's not much point talking about it because I've never seen them, but there are other realms that are described. But the turtle only surfaces once every 100 years, meaning that its main address is in the lower realms, in the realm as an animal or other realms of existence. Once every 100 years he pops his head up. The chances of that turtle popping his head up when that ring is floating around the vast ocean blown by the wind, for him to put his neck through that ring is how difficult it is to obtain a precious human life with all of these 8 freedoms and 10 endowments, which is what we are told we have obtained. And, it's well documented in many of the books what those 18 are, and if you're interested to read them, you can do that. You can find out what they are. But that's pretty. I find that a pretty powerful analogy. So, as it is hard to find this boat again, this is no time for sleep, you fool. This is what I really like, being reminded. Don't be a fool. Don't let ourselves down. Seize the opportunity while the opportunity is here. Okay, so I'll just have to move it along a little bit, because I would really like to, invite discussion as well. But, so enough of all that. What's so bad about everything? For example, I have a job, I have a house to live in, I've got good health, family, got children, grown-up children, everybody here has incredibly fortunate circumstances. We're all eating well, we've got access to medical services, you know, go on holidays, we've got cars. We're all doing pretty well. So what's the problem? You know, what's all this about suffering, and why do we need to do anything? So this is where I'm going to lead on to the description of what the 8 general sufferings are of the human realm, human existence. And before I start that, I just thought it's interesting or helpful to relay the story of the Buddha's life. Because the Buddha, you may not be aware, I'm not sure, you know, was 2,500 years ago, walked on this earth, and he was born as a prince into a royal kingdom, and had everything available to him, comforts and luxuries. And at the time of his birth, it was predicted that he would be either a great spiritual leader, or I don't know if that was the word, but has great spiritual potential, or also he could be a great leader in the world. And so his father, the king, shielded the Buddha from all the unpleasantness in the world as much as he could, and kept him almost a prisoner within the kingdom. And he didn't want him to be slightly distracted, and was sort of lining him up to become his, the next king, I guess. And the Buddha was more and more becoming more and more yearning to go outside of the kingdom. And so when he did go outside, the first thing he saw was somebody that was old. He'd never seen old age before. And that really affected him, recognising somebody suffering from old age. Then he went back. I think actually, I haven't really prepared the story. This is just going back from memory from a long time ago, but I think he went through the 4 different gates of the kingdom, and then he went out through the other gate the next day. And when he was on his journey out there that time, he saw somebody that was suffering from sickness. He'd never seen sickness before. And again, that affected him greatly. And then on the 3rd day, he went out and he saw somebody that had died. He saw a corpse for the first time. And again, this affected him greatly. It was on the last gate that he went out, and he saw a yogi, somebody meditating. And he realised that's the path. That's the path that I need to follow to understand what is the cause of all this suffering, of birth, of old age, sickness and death. So this really, the Buddha of course went off, he renounced his kingdom, and he achieved the complete state of enlightenment. After 6 years of asceticism, not asceticism, is that the right word? Yeah. And, starved himself. He was just skin and bone, nearly about to die, actually. And a farmer daughter came by and saw him and gave him some milk and some sustenance, and he realised, of course, that was the extreme way, that wasn't the right way. And eventually, he sat under the Bodhi tree and achieved a complete state of enlightenment. There you go, enlightenment, there you go, in quick story. But it was great. I actually went to, when I was in India, I went to the stone monument of that was built in memory of that woman that gave the Buddha the nourishing milk that allowed him to turn away from that extreme asceticism and instead to follow the middle way path. And it was through that he eventually sat under the Bodhi tree and achieved complete enlightenment. So after the Buddha was enlightened, he taught the Four Noble Truths. And that was the first teaching that the Buddha ever gave. Time goes on. I've got lots more I want to say. Sorry. Sorry, I forgot what I was saying now. The Four Noble Truths, thank you. And so I'm going to get sidetracked ever so slightly. The Four Noble Truths. So when the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths in Sarnath, in India, he taught it to his 5 close disciples that retreated into the forest with him. And they were his first students that he taught the Dharma to. And I was thinking about that today in preparing for this talk, because there's a wonderful text called the Golden Light Sutra. And at the moment we recite that a lot here at Tara Institute, and it's highly praised by many of the great teachers here. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's on the... I have to have this photo on the far right. He has since passed away, but he was the guiding light of bringing Buddhism to the West for 50 years, 60 years. Amazing. And he so much recommended that we recite the Golden Light Sutra, so we do that. But anyway, in chapter 18 of the Golden Light Sutra, it talks about the Buddha in his previous life before he achieved enlightenment. And I'm going to say this really quickly because so he and his 2 brothers went into the forest to look for flowers or look for whatever. And they came across, this is before the Buddha was enlightened, he was on the path to enlightenment. And they came across a tigress that was famished. And she had cubs, 5 cubs, 4 cubs, and she hadn't eaten for days. And it was quite clear that the tigress was either going to die or eat the cubs. And the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, on the path to achieving enlightenment, was so overcome with compassion that he thought, now has come the time to give my body, to sacrifice my body for the sake of this tiger. So he did that. He actually took his clothes off, cut himself, allowed the tiger to eat him, and he gave his life. And it's obviously something that we could never even think about doing, something like that. I mean, it's one thing to save your life to save another. We could do that if the situation arose. You know, I'd do anything to save my son or daughter if they were in a position and I could save them. But, you know, to do an incredible thing like that is something way beyond what we would do. But this Bodhisattva on the path, determined to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, thought, now is the time for me to practice supreme generosity. And so he did that. And that was the story. When the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, the 5 disciples that he was teaching were those cubs reincarnated as humans. And I just thought that was quite amazing how it all sort of fits in. Anyway, I will be doing another Monday night talk next week, so I haven't covered half of what I really wanted to cover, so I'll continue to cover it next week. But is there any questions? Because I've said an awful lot, and I've introduced a whole lot of things. If you haven't been here before, if you haven't heard of Buddhism before, you're probably thinking, this guy is crazy. You know, there's a lot of new concepts if you're not familiar at all, and I apologise for that. But you have come to a Buddhist centre. I am trying to convey the essence of the Buddhist teachings. I haven't covered anywhere near it, really. But is there any questions? Have I really raised any doubts or anything anybody would like to particularly say? Feel happy to... Sorry? Yes, okay. Thank you. That's a really good way to finish that. So the Four Noble Truths is the noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the cause of suffering, the noble truth of the cessation or ending of suffering, and the noble truth of the path that leads to that cessation. So the Buddha hasn't just put in our face reality. There is great suffering that we need to acknowledge. He's also then presented, yes, but what's the cause of that suffering? And that's taught in the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, which is karma and delusions, karma and ignorance, or delusions rooted in ignorance. These are the causes that cause us to experience the sufferings of cyclic existence. But there is hope. You know, there is the third noble truth, the noble truth of cessation. It is possible to end the causes of suffering. And it's possible to achieve a state that is the cessation of that suffering. And the Buddha taught the path that leads to that cessation. So there's a verse that summarises this beautifully, I find. It says, if we think about our own health or illness, so that illness is to be diagnosed, its cause is to be abandoned, health is to be achieved, the medicine is to be relied on. And it's very relatable, isn't it? We know that. If we're sick, first of all, we've got to recognise we're sick. Then we go to the doctor, find out what the cause is, avoid the cause, take the medicine, and experience health, good health. It's the steps. But then the continuation of that saying is, likewise, then we're talking about the Four Noble Truths, likewise, suffering, its cause, cessation, and the path are to be diagnosed, abandoned, reached, and relied on. So that just sort of gives you a bit of a practical example about how we can relate to the Four Noble Truths. I'll talk more about that next Monday. Are there any more questions? Otherwise we'll do another meditation. But
good question. At the time of the Buddha, or at the time when the Buddha changed his path, if you will,
yeah.
how established already were some of these ideas like reincarnation and suffering is a cause of suffering, etc. So are we accepting that he essentially created all of this from almost a zero base, as it were? Or was that line of thinking already quite evolved in that part of the world at that time?
I think it was quite evolved. There was lots of, like one of the things that the Buddha saw at that time was a yogi meditating. So there were practitioners, there was inner development that was underway in India at that time. So I'm not sure how old Hinduism is. Some of the other ancient Indian religions or philosophies, but the idea of reincarnation was very much well established. And the idea of karma, the law of cause and effect, that actions will result in consequences in one way or another, that was very much prevalent. But what the Buddha in particular was a pioneer of was the depth of his understanding of reality. So the wisdom that he developed, that was the complete opposite to ignorance that holds us caught in cyclic existence. The Buddha identified clearly and developed that clear wisdom. So that was the real, one of the main things that the Buddha, perhaps you could say, newly presented. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. All right. Haven't scared everybody off now, I hope. All right, well, just in the last 5 minutes, let's do another meditation. And this is called a friend, enemy, stranger meditation. I did this 2 weeks ago. The purpose of it is to try to equalise our attitude to others. You know we feel a strong attachment to our friends. We may feel a strong aversion to people that give us difficulty. And we may not care too much about people that aren't either of those, aren't friends or enemies. And so that particular attitude is what we are trying to level. You know, like they say, like a clear canvas. We can't possibly develop great compassion and altruism for others if we're still having attitudes of, I like this person because they give me something. I don't like this person because they don't give me something. And I don't care about that person because they don't give me or cause me harm at all. That attitude, that discriminating attitude, is really rooted in self-cherishing. It's all about me. What am I getting out of that relationship? I'm not saying that we can't have genuine friends, but I'm just saying the biased attitude of I'm attached to friends, I'm averse to people that give me problems, and I'm indifferent to people that give me neither. I've applied this meditation technique in my own life on a number of occasions where I've had real difficulty with my boss at work, a number of different bosses over the years. And, you know, I have really noticed the difference. When I really look at that and I focus on, we'll do this meditation, and I bring that person to my mind and think, why am I so angry at that person? It does change your own perception of that person. I found it did. And I was suddenly able to be a bit more open, not as judgmental. Actually, that person is not that different from me. They have feelings just like I do. And so we're trying to break away from that sort of mind. Okay, so let's start this. We'll just do it for 5 minutes. So bring to mind in front of you the image of somebody that you will call a friend, somebody dear to you. And bring to mind, why is that person dear to me? Is it the way they smile at you, or the way they talk to you? It's something about what it brings to you. Just examine that for a bit. And then move that person to the left of your vision, and imagine now in front of you is somebody that you feel an aversion to, somebody you really don't like. Why is that? They've done something to you. They've not given you something. And then move again, both to the left, and now who appears in front of you is somebody you don't know. perhaps somebody you saw in a shop, or maybe a pedestrian as you're driving. And observe how you feel indifferent to that person. You're not connected to that person. They don't give you anything. They don't cause you any harm. So you're indifferent to them. And so, even though it feels very set, this is how they are, we know from our own experience that people who have been our friends we can fall out with. We no longer like them. Or less frequently, but we may have experienced that. People that we dislike, we come to like. Perhaps they've apologised or done something, but our perception changes. And people that we're indifferent to can become a friend or can become an enemy, somebody that we dislike. So it's not as set as we may think it might be. And it's good to use this meditation technique for people that we have difficulty with, or people that we're very attached to. Maybe we don't need to be quite so attached. Doesn't mean not loving. We're not talking about love here. And what's in common for all three people is they're all exactly the same in their wish for happiness and their wish to not experience the slightest suffering, slightest difficulty. All three are exactly the same as we are. So we should try and become familiar with developing this equanimity. And it's through equanimity that we can begin to develop impartial love, impartial compassion. All right, so let's finish with that, but let's just spend a few moments, and this is an important part of Buddhist practice, is that any virtue or any merit, any positive potential that we may have accumulated tonight from gathering together and talking together, let's dedicate it for a specific purpose, because with the dedication, you're like the reins of a horse. You're able to direct where you want that positive potential to ripen. So let's just think, may any positive potential be dedicated to peace and happiness throughout the world, the end of all wars, the end of all conflict. And harmony throughout the world. Let's dedicate it for that. All right, well, thank you everybody. Please feel welcome to stay for a cup of tea, and I hope you can join me next week, and I'll try and finish off what I wanted to cover. Thank you.